BCC. I'm Nick Parker. I am the children's minister here at Bridgetown Church, and I'm here with Kathy Davis and Mark Fair, who are a part of the team from BCC that are headed to Beverly, Kentucky to go to Redbird Mission. Mark and Kathy have been a part of various teams that have gone to Redbird, and they want to share some of their experiences with you in hopes that you will consider joining them next summer. So, Mark, Kathy, what sticks out to you most about the experiences, the time that you've had at Redbird?
Well, the most significant thing that I can think of is that it's a whole week, and you get to spend an entire week with a family, and you get to learn a lot about them. We've been on trips where they have kids, and the kids get off the bus, and we can't wait to see them, and they can't wait to see us.
Wow.
And learn all kinds of things about the family. And that whole week experience is really the key.
That's amazing. Kathy, what about you?
I agree with that. And then also, to add on to what Mark said, is you're not only there for a week, but you are not inundated with social media. So there's no television. We do have a little bit of texting ability back at the camp. But other than that, we are focused. We are focused on the mission at hand. We are focused on what God is leading us to do while we're there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I have one thing in particular that I remember is our first year that we were there. We were helping a gentleman in his home because he only had one way in and out of his house. And of course that's dangerous, especially when you're living down in the holler.
Okay.
So we actually pushed out the back of his house, built a door and a little ramp for him out the back of his home.
Wow.
This gentleman loved Jesus. He was so welcoming that we sat, and I remember particularly one afternoon when we were there 5 days, we sat with him and we just sat on the couch and talked about his life, and he hunted in the woods for food often, and just the memories of being with him, it's just so impactful.
Yeah.
That it's something that definitely stays with you when you come home.
Significant interaction for him with you,
Yes.
but also your interaction with
Yes.
you with him. If you think that you might want to experience something like what Kathy and Mark shared, I want to invite you to get more info right after church today in the fellowship hall downstairs. You'll be able to ask some questions, you'll learn more about this upcoming trip. Again, there will be no expectation of you making a decision today, but you'll have a chance to learn more. And if you have kids in Bridgetown Kids, feel free to take them with you to the meeting, or you can leave them with me and my team, and we will take good care of them while you learn about this unique opportunity.
Oh, good morning, man. I feel like there should be a mosh pit or something up here during that intro. That's pretty rad. So, good morning. My name is Mr. Nick. I am the children's minister here at Bridgetown Church of Christ. And hopefully, as you can see, I kind of take that job pretty seriously. I want to wish you all a happy Halloween, a happy All Hallows Eve, happy Reformation Day. You know, as Protestants, some of us are Protestants in here. We get to celebrate Martin Luther and the whole 95 Theses on October 31st, all that sort of good stuff. So, joining us today, hey, Jonathan, I know this is a little bit of a change, but can we bring the house lights up so I can see? There we go. I like to see these beautiful faces. Some of you need to be wearing Halloween masks, but, I'll look past that. But this morning we have the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders in here. This is my Sunday school class. If you're a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th grader, raise your hand. Let's give them a hand. Yeah, all right. I know a lot of these kids are up here because they have to be, not because they want to be. Raise your hand if you're here because you have to be, not because you want to be. Oh man, I'm seeing too many hands go up. Too many hands go up. Well, I am glad you all are here today, and I do want to invite you, not just because I'm the kids minister, but because I would legitimately love to see this many people show up for an event that is happening next Sunday after church. It is called Parfaits, Pals, and Pizza. Now, like the name implies, it is an ice cream sundae, like build your own kind of ice cream sundae event. We're going to have NYPD pizza, so it's going to be some good pizza with our pals. So all of our friends, you all are friends, you're invited. So if you have not RSVP'd, we're not requiring an RSVP, but man, it really does help us to know how much pizza to order and ice cream and all that sort of stuff. So raise your hand if you are like, I'm definitely going next Sunday to Parfaits, Pals, and Pizzas. I see a lot of kids. I see a few adults. All right. Well, I hope, raise your hand if you're a maybe. You're a maybe, I'll go. All right, all right. So there's some maybes. Well, I hope that even if you didn't raise your hand, that you will consider coming. It's an event for all ages. It's not just for kids. It's definitely kid-centered in some ways, but we're going to have some fun games, some prizes that you can have a chance to win, plus pizza and ice cream. So I hope that you will hit the next page up. That's where you can find the RSVP. In addition, if you have some friends, neighbors, there's a bunch of invitations out there at the cafe that you can use to hand out on Halloween night to trick-or-treaters or just to give some friends, neighbors, that sort of thing. So, this morning, let me get to where I'm supposed to go. There we go. All right, so we are continuing through our Mark series. So if this is your first Sunday here, we've been going through the book of Mark, the Gospel of Mark, and today we are in Mark chapter 6, just like you heard Kyle Klassner, he read from Mark chapter 6 this morning. And it is the story of the haunting of the Sea of Galilee. So it's kind of fitting. Actually, my initial costume idea was to be the dad from Bluey, but that it didn't work out. My costume was canceled. My daughter was going to be Bluey this morning. Now she's dressed as an axe-wielding murderer, so, in the same vein. But the story of the ghost on the Sea of Galilee is what we're going to be talking about this morning. But before we get there, we are actually going to come up with our own story, and it is a story of how to get rid of ghosts. But to do it, we're going to do a Mad Lib. Now, I don't know about you, but my family, we love doing Mad Libs in the car. Mad Libs, we're doing a Mad Lib this morning, not just because it's fun, it is fun, but also because it actually does relate to what we're going to be talking about, what we're going to see in Mark chapter 6, because a Mad Lib takes our expectations of a story and it changes them. And the changes can either be humorous, they can be silly, or it just can get our attention. And that's in some ways what happens in Mark chapter 6. So we are going to do a Mad Lib here. So you're going to have to be kind of loud. And my youngest daughter, Allie, asked last night as we were coming home, she knew we were going to do this. She's like, can we say things like poopy? I was like, sure, yeah. So, when I ask you for something, if you want to say a silly word, go ahead. So the idea with a Mad Lib is I ask you for a part of speech. So first one, I need a plural noun. What? Cats. Okay. We know, Joe. All right. Now I need a verb. Hit. All right. All right, that's good. Okay. I need a number. Someone from somewhere over here. Somewhere over here. 46. What is it? 46. Okay, 46. Thank you, Betty. All right. Now, somewhere in this section, I need a silly word. Onomatopoeia. All right. I am going to spell that phonetically. Onomatopoeia. There we go. Very good. All right. Now I need a verb ending in ing. Running. Let's do a different one. That actually makes sense in this, and we don't want it to make sense. Huh? Hold on. What? What was this back here? What was it? Farting. Okay. There we go. Leave it up to a dad. All right, maybe I should ask all the rest of the dads for the next one. Okay. A type of liquid. Of course. Beer, okay. All right. A plural noun, another plural noun. Penguins, I like that. Okay. A verb. So somebody say slap? Licking, okay. Well, that's actually good in this spot. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Now I need an article of clothing. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the only right answer for this one. The other acceptable answer would have been jockstrap, but okay. A verb, another verb. Lying, like telling a lie? Flying, okay, all right. All right, we'll put it there. I'm going to add a little word here. There we go, now it makes sense. Okay, I like it. I wanted to make sure we get that in there. Okay, this is always a little dangerous. Part of your body. Okay, armpit, that's good. As soon as somebody said it, we're just going to get in there. Okay. Now I need a type of food, plural. Back here. Pizza? Is that you back there, Eli? All right, I like it. That's perfect, actually, because it's connected to what I was just talking about earlier. Parfaits, pals, and pizza that you're all going to come to. All right, now I need an adjective. Adjective describes a noun. Stinky or sticky? Stinky, okay. All right, now I need a place. Did you say church? I like it. Okay, we got couple more here. Few more. 4 more. A verb ending in ing. What was it? Spitting. Oh, man. Gross. Okay. An adverb. A word that ends in ly. Mostly. I don't know if that works. Rapidly. Okay, we'll go with rapidly. All right. Zach, since I didn't take your last one, give me a verb. It's good. It's like going to school, learning. What is it? Kicking? Pick? Yeah, pick. That's what I thought I said earlier, but yeah, I did. All right, last one. Adjective. Fuzzy. All right. All right, here we go. See how it turned out. How to get rid of ghosts. Follow these simple cats to make sure your room is free of ghosts. Ghosts love to hit under the bed. To scare them off, get on your bed and do 46 jumping jacks while screaming, onomatopoeia! That will send those ghosts farting out the door. Then, check your closet by sniffing the air for the scent of Ecto beer. If you smell anything, your closet is probably haunted by penguins. To get rid of them, lick your dirty underwear. It was your all's idea. You're the ones that are gross. Ghosts don't fly with smelly socks. If you still can't find your ghost, go to the kitchen and open the fridge with your armpit and get a bowl of pizza and ice cream. It's every ghost's stinky dessert. Set a bowl of ice cream in your church and wait for the ghost to come out of its spitting spot. When it does, rapidly ask the ghost to leave. Most ghosts will pick away if you use fuzzy manners. Great job, great job. Give yourselves a hand. That was awesome, that was awesome. Y'all are very creative, very creative. So this morning, again, we did not do this Mad Lib for no reason. We're talking about the ghost story in the Gospel of Mark. And just by show of hands, is anyone here a fan of ghost stories? Raise your hand if you just either like to hear them, like to tell them. Yeah, okay. How about scary movies? Raise your hand if you just like scary movies. Okay, all right. Well, I saw recently an ad for a scary movie that I was pretty intrigued by. It looked actually pretty amazing. It is called Slaughterhouse. Okay, you can see it there on the screen. This is, just as you suspect, a horror movie that is centered around a sloth. The main character, Emily, who's in the middle there of the poster, she is a member of a sorority, and she adopts a sloth named Alpha that she is thinking is going to be the mascot. Well, unfortunately for Emily and her sorority girlfriends, Alpha is a dangerous, psychopathic sloth. And as Alpha slowly, apparently, begins to kill all the sorority girls, they have to figure out how to survive and escape the sloth. Now, by show of hands, is there anyone who wants to admit they have already seen Slaughterhouse? Okay. Anybody intrigued? They're like, you know what, I might be interested in checking that out. Okay, well, just for research purposes, I found out that it is on Hulu. So, it's already in my watch list. Maybe you can add it to yours. But I'm showing you this movie poster because, again, it's connected to what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about Mark chapter 6 and the story of the ghost on the water. But look with me at that poster. Put that back up there, Lennon. Without seeing the trailer, if I had not even told you what the movie was about, there's clues in that poster that let you know what kind of a movie it is. So what are some things that you notice in this movie poster that gives you clues as to what kind of movie it is? Let's see, in the back. Ariana. Okay. Ginormous sloth in the back, rat, and he has this menacing look. Allie? Don't rush. Yeah, just the words that they chose, die in there, okay? Simon. Yeah, he's got blood on his talons. Yeah, he's got huge talons. Jackson. Yeah, it looks kind of like Slaughterhouse, right? So the font choice, the scary, the frightened look on Emily's face, the girl in the back there that just looks kind of psychotic, she's probably the first one to die. But it's nighttime, the silhouette, we see it's kind of this haunted look. All these things give us a clue as to what kind of a movie it is. And these are familiar to us. This is a genre that we're familiar with. And we've seen these kinds of things before. So I'm going to have them put up some other horror movie posters from some famous scary movies, horror movies. So we see, again, in these, we see a theme, dark colors. We see reds. We see blacks. We see it's nighttime in a lot of these. There's that look of fear on some of the characters' faces. The one movie up here, actually we just watched it a couple nights ago, that I still enjoy is Fright Night. Anybody seen Fright Night? Yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's a vampire movie. Growing up, I would actually watch this with my mom, and I've probably seen it a dozen times. And it's the reason that when I was in honestly elementary school, but when I was in elementary school, middle school, that I wanted to be a vampire. Now, I knew that, as a kid, I knew the whole, murder thing was wrong, and I still know that, but I made a deal with myself that if I ever do get turned into a vampire, that I would only suck the blood of bad people. So, if I ever get turned into a vampire, Joe, I'm coming right for you. So, just joking, I don't want any of Joe's blood on me. But let me show you a joke poster, and you'll see that in this one, they bend the rules again of what's expected. So we're going to put this slide up there. This is a spoof of the movie Step Brothers, and it uses Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers. So Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th, and Michael Myers from the Halloween movies, and it kind of changes it. And you know right away, oh, this is a joke. They're making those changes to draw our attention. It's done to make us take notice. So let's think of ghost stories as we expect them, okay? Ghost stories. Where do ghost stories typically take place? Graveyard. Where else? Haunted houses. In a forest. Joe's basement. Yeah, he said it, I didn't. Joe said in his basement. Is that because Betty was down there? Man, Joe, you're harsh. When do ghost stories... Betty is Joe's mother-in-law, by the way. But when do ghost stories take place? At night. Yes, it's at night. It's in some eerie, spooky location. Why would a ghost stay there? Maybe it's a safe place for him. Okay. What did you say, Simon? Okay, yeah. There's lots of different reasons why they would stay. Maybe that's where they were killed, and so they're haunting this place until they find peace. Maybe they've been trapped there by some, ancient ritual or something like that. But we hear these things, and even though, some of us know each other, some of us don't, but we know the ideas of what to expect in a ghost story. We know the ideas of what to expect in a horror movie. We know when an ad for Step Brothers is a joke versus when it's a real ad for a movie like Slaughterhouse or Fright Night. You see, both these movie posters and our expectations of ghosts, they meet certain expectations that we have of those types of media, whether it's a ghost story, a Mad Lib, we know the changes. And that's what's going on in the Gospel of Mark. Okay, so the people that the Gospel of Mark it was written to, that original audience. In Sunday school, I just say people in Bible times. That's obviously a very big, broad span of time, but I'll just use that so that we can all be kind of on the same page. So when I say in Bible times, just think like the time right now that we're talking about with Mark and his audience. So Mark and his audience, the people that were living in Bible times, they told ghost stories as well. They heard ghost stories. They didn't have horror movies like we do, of course, but they had certain expectations that they had of what you would hear in a ghost story. And the story of Jesus walking on the water fits, in some ways, the expectations that they had for a classic ghost story. So let me tell you a couple of those expectations. The first, and it's not a surprise, is that a ghost would appear at night. Now, that's when we tend to, again, expect ghosts to show up. And that expectation, we see that in Mark chapter 6 because it says that it was during the fourth watch of the night that Jesus shows up walking on the water. That's when the disciples think, oh, this is a ghost. Now, for us, we may not think that that's all that surprising. It is important, though, because, again, when you read these ancient Greco-Roman, Greek-Roman ghost stories, nighttime was important, but ghosts in our day almost have like a glowing character, right? You can see them in a dark room. They kind of, you think of like Slimer in Ghostbusters. He kind of glows. Well, in Bible times, that's not how they thought of ghosts. Ghosts couldn't be seen unless there was a little bit of light. They could be seen by the light of a campfire just past the reach of where maybe the main light was. They would show up when the sun was just barely beginning to rise. And so during the fourth watch of the night, now the fourth watch of the night is from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. During those hours, right when the sun's rays are beginning to rise above the horizon, that's when Jesus shows up. So already, This ancient audience that's reading this, that's hearing this, they're going, oh yeah, okay, this is a ghost story. The second expectation that they had of a ghost and a ghost story is, again, probably not surprising to us. It's the reaction of people who see the ghost. They're not going to be like, oh man, what's that? Oh, that's cool. No, they're going to be terrified. And again, Mark tells us that the disciples are in the boat and they see this thing coming out, walking towards them on the water, and they are terrified. So all this is, again, tracking with that first audience that is hearing this. But then there's a change. And it's a kind of Mad Lib kind of a change. It's a kind of Step Brothers with Jason and Michael Myers on it kind of a change. And it's why the text says they think he's a ghost. Now, some of you might have your little Bible books out. Maybe you have your Bible on your phone that you're following along. What does it say? I think it's in verse 49. I don't have this in my notes. What does it say in verse 49 as to why they thought Jesus was a ghost? Exactly. It's because he's walking on the water. And it's that little detail that in the minds of the first folks hearing this, reading this, they would have gone, that doesn't make any sense. It's like talking about, what was it here? The ecto beer. Okay? We know it's supposed to be ectoplasm. And so when we hear that change, it's, that doesn't make sense. What's going on here? And it's because amongst the other expectations that ancient people would have of ghost stories, there was one pretty much universally agreed upon expectation that they had, and that was that ghosts do not go near water. Water for ghosts is how we think of garlic, crosses, holy water to vampires. They kind of form a barrier, a boundary, a block for those creatures. And that's what water was for ghosts. And so I know it sounds maybe a little strange, but in telling the story this way, Mark has kind of set the stage for a classic ghost story. Again, it's just as the sun is beginning to rise. When you would expect, it was kind of like the witching hour, when you would expect a ghost to come out. Because again, they need that little bit of light to be seen. And then when the disciples see this ghostly figure, they're terrified. Makes total sense to the people who are reading this, who are listening to this story be told. But then they get to that part where it's like, well, how did they know that it was a ghost? Where were they? Oh, what was the ghost doing? Oh, it was walking on the water. Ghosts don't do that. You see, in a number of letters and writings and literature from this time, it was not ghosts that walked on the water. They never did. It was gods and God who walked on the water. And we see this alluded to in the Old Testament, very beginning, the first verse. It says that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and the Spirit of God was hovering. It was walking on the surface of the deep. But probably the most clear allusion, and maybe where Mark, the author, is getting his story from, part of his story, is Job chapter 9, verse 8. It uses the exact same words there as what it says Jesus is doing here. It says that God alone walks or treads on the water, which is exactly what Jesus is doing. He is walking on the water. And so what we see, what Mark is doing here, what he's showing us, if we're careful and we kind of look and we pay attention, is that he's showing us a group of disciples who insist on believing what is absurd in their day. They insist on believing something that is silly. They insist on believing something that doesn't make sense. See, they see that Jesus is coming out walking on the water, and they fail to recognize, fail to understand, fail to believe again in what Jesus really is. and to put their trust and their faith in him. Mark tells us that after seeing Jesus walking on the water, seeing the wind die down, arriving on the other shore, it says they didn't understand. They were astonished. Now, at least to me, I read that, and initially I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense. You just got pulled in from your all-night rowing session. You get to the other side, and you're like, dude, did you see that? Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Jesus was walking on the water. I thought he was a ghost. Yeah, me too. That'd make total sense, but that's not what Mark is doing here. Again, we would maybe miss it if we didn't know what typical ghost stories sounded like in Bible times. And the other reason for their astonishment isn't because they saw Jesus walking on the water. It says in verse 51, they were astonished because their hearts were hard. It wasn't because they'd seen something amazing. It was because of their hard hearts. They want Jesus to be something that he is not, to the point that they're willing to believe what they know is ridiculous. They weren't seeing a ghost walking on the water. They were seeing God walk on the water, and they didn't have categories for that. But it was because, in part, of their stubbornness, their refusal to see that and accept the truth of what they had seen. So, a couple weeks ago, Kyle Klassner, who did our scripture reading this morning, Kyle talked in his sermon about the parable of the farmer and the seeds. And the farmer is representative of God, and the seed is the word of God. And so the farmer is going out and he's just casting seed everywhere. And the seed is falling on lots of different types of soil. It's falling on rocky soil, thorny soil, and good soil. And we sometimes like to think of ourselves and maybe even think of the disciples as like, oh, they were the good soil. Because look, we have like books written by them and all that sort of stuff. But the Gospels over and over again paint this picture of the disciples not as good soil, but as rocky soil. They're not getting it. They're refusing to accept the truth of what they're seeing, of what they're hearing. But here's what I find amazing, is that even though the disciples don't get it, their understanding of Jesus is lacking. Their commitment to Jesus is going to fail. It's going to waver. Jesus, though, perseveres. Jesus perseveres. His commitment to his disciples never wavers. He never abandons his fragile disciples. He continues to summon these would-be followers to follow him into service, to follow him into submission, and ultimately to follow him even to the cross. And so what I see in the Gospels is Jesus and his unfailing commitment to his friends, unfailing commitment to his followers. And so there's a part of me that when I read this story, for me, I love learning little things about, background of the Bible and all that sort of stuff. But when I discovered this, when I found this idea of it's not just, they were freaked out because they saw a ghost, but how they didn't want to see Jesus for who he really was. Man, I put myself in that story at that point because I've never seen a ghost. And I definitely have never seen Jesus walking on water. But I have definitely refused to see Jesus at times for who he really is. I have chosen to sometimes believe in a Jesus that I know is not really what he's like, that tolerates a little bit more in my life than probably he does. Like, oh, I think he's okay with that. I don't need to give that as much attention as I need to. No. See, we're all of us, we have stubborn hearts that refuse to believe what sometimes is right in front of us. And yet, just like with the first disciples, Jesus does not give up on us. Jesus does not give up. Even when we screw up over and over again, and I am the chief of screw-ups, He's there. He's committed. He's promised to stay even when we turn our back, even when we abandon him. You see, the climax of Jesus' disciples' failure to understand who Jesus is when they turn their back on him at his arrest. But Jesus told them that they were going to do it. He told them, as is in Mark chapter 14, he says, "You will all fall away." Jesus knew that his disciples, his friends, were going to turn their back. Anybody know when he said that? Any guesses? Where were they when he said that? It was earlier than that. It was actually at the Last Supper. He said, "You will all fall away." And what were they doing in the midst of him telling them, "You're going to abandon me. You're going to leave me. You're going to fall away"? They were eating together. And you probably heard this, but eating was one of the greatest expressions of fellowship in that time. And Jesus is there with his disciples. He's eating with them, saying, even with Judas, "You're all going to fall away. Here, pass that bread. Here, take a drink of this. Let's eat together as friends, as family, knowing that in just a few hours, they're all going to be gone." And each week, we take communion together. And we're going to take it together in just a moment. If you haven't already, there's communion cups in the back. You can grab one if you missed one on your way in. But we're going to take communion together. And we do this every week because we want to remember what it was that Jesus did for us. He did not give up on those first disciples. And he doesn't give up on us, his disciples, either. We all, again, have stubborn hearts that refuse to believe, that refuse to put faith in him, refuse to admit areas where our life is not in sync with what he desires. And yet, we can look to the cross and say, man, that's a symbol, that's a memory, that's a reminder of the fact that Jesus was willing to suffer rejection and abandonment for us, so that we could be in a right relationship with him, to make us part of his family. And so even right now, whether you are in a spot maybe closer to Judas than one of the other disciples, or maybe you're feeling like Peter or Thaddeus, wherever you're at, Jesus offers this meal to you as his friend, as a part of his family, knowing no matter where you are, he is 100% committed to you. And so we're going to celebrate. We're going to remember. First of all, we're going to remember his death by eating the bread. Jesus said, "This is my body that is given for you. Do it to remember me." In the same way, he said, celebrate and remember the blood that he sheds for us. Mark chapter 14, verse 26, it talks about at the end of what we call the Lord's Supper, the Last Supper, the disciples sang a song together. And then they headed off to the Garden of Gethsemane, where they would abandon Jesus. And so we're going to do that, not abandon Jesus, but we're going to sing a song together. And so this song is called Firm Foundation. And the first part of the song says that he's faithful through generations. And then it asks a question, so why would he fail now? And the answer that it sings is he won't. He won't. And so thank God for Jesus' commitment to us, that it was not contingent upon our commitment to him. So let's sing.